The Baird government is running an ugly bully boy campaign against local government that communities across the state are now becoming aware of and vocally resisting. In October 2013, the Independent Local Government Review Panel handed down its final report on local government reform. And contrary to what the Baird government would like people to believe, the report did not recommend any specific amalgamations for local councils. Instead, it put forward some tentative proposals that the panel never pretended had been adequately tested or consulted on. Indeed, as the report said at the time, as far as its own task is concerned, the panel wishes to emphasise that setting out desirable options for boundary changes is not, and they capitalise not, the same as recommending forced amalgamations. Moreover, under the current provisions of the Local Government Act, amalgamations and boundary changes cannot occur without a further process after the panel completes its work, and would involve the Boundaries Commission, see below. Thus, whether and when the panel's options are pursued is entirely a matter for the state government and the councils and communities involved. And indeed, the panel said that the current Boundaries Commission process should be further strengthened before any of their tentative proposals were considered. They suggested that, amongst other things, these additional matters be included in the Boundaries Commission process. They suggested that if the proposal proceeds, the amalgamation proposal proceeds to the Commission, they should require the Commission to prepare a public information report setting out the arguments for and against amalgamations. They proposed retaining the current provisions for inquiries, surveys and polls, but removing the minister's power to decide whether an inquiry is warranted. And they proposed that in every case of an amalgamation, to require the Commission to conduct a survey or poll of all residents and ratepayers in the areas affected, unless two or more councils have proposed a voluntary measure and the Commission is satisfied that those councils have already undertaken adequate community consultation. Now, instead of that much more thorough community-based consultation recommended to test the tentative proposals of the Independent Local Government Review Panel, the government instead decided to have a quick and dirty inquiry undertaken by IPART. And IPART has no skills in assessing the democratic values of local government. Having IPART assess local government is like getting an accountant to judge a horse. Those tentative proposals from the Independent Local Government Review Panel have now been set in stone and set out as immovable benchmarks against which councils have been tested by IPART. Those tentative proposals were indeed the very basis of the scale and capacity criteria, much maligned and criticised by anybody who's considered it, that IPART required every council to meet. Having accepted those tentative proposals as gospel truth, the Baird government, selling this untrue argument that somehow the Independent Local Government Review proposals had been evidence-based or evidence-tested, is it any wonder that when IPART tested council against those recommendations, that its final report and recommendations almost exactly mirrored what had been in the Sanson report? The Independent Local Government Review Panel by Professor Sanson tentative proposal was to have 33 out of Sydney's 41 metropolitan councils merge. So what did IPART recommend? IPART recommended that 34 merge. The Independent Local Government Review Panel recommended that of the 152 statewide councils, that 104 councils merge. What was IPART's recommendation? Almost the exact mirror, that 103 councils merge. It's almost a direct translation. In short, IPART conducted a sham review. They simply rubber-stamped the untested, evidence-free proposals that have been put forward by the Independent Local Government Review Panel. And this week, after 2 pretend days of consideration by the Baird government, the Baird government released the IPART's Fit for the Future report into local councils and basically is bullying local government to either accept it, shut up, or they will force the amalgamation. They haven't explained how they'll force the amalgamation, but the Baird government is peddling the line, the evidence-free line, that the outcomes from the IPART review are evidence-based. They're not. They are simply rubber-stamping the untested proposals from the Independent Local Government Review Panel. And now the Baird government is selling the argument that IPART is somehow supporting their argument that there's a financial crisis across local government. What did IPART find in that regard? Of Sydney's 41 metro councils, 93% were found by IPART to meet all the financial criteria. Great big tick for local government's finances in Metro Sydney. This government has a campaign built on sand, an evidence-free campaign. Their only argument is a political one to remove local democracy.
The question is that this House